Earlier this year, I was so happy to ditch Apple and the ecosystem that started out as a wonderful place to exist and work creatively, but eventually became more like a ball and chain that prevented me from ever leaving. And I thought I'd never look back. Until now. But how could I ever go back to Apple and the 11 Pro Max when it actually lacks so many of the features of a phone that's been on sale for over 6 months? What made me switch back? What did I miss? What do I get with an iPhone that I didn't get with an Android? Let's get into it. So yeah, 6 months ago, I'd finally escaped the Apple ecosystem and life was great. The S10 Plus felt like the smartphone the iPhone should have always been. It had an in-screen fingerprint sensor, reverse wireless charging, fast wireless charging 2.0, expandable storage space, a headphone jack, USB-C, all of the things that the 11 Pro Max still doesn't have 6 months later. I mean, surely all of those features were worth just losing something optional like iMessage and AirDrop, right? Well, before we get to why I switched, and trust me, that's going to be extremely hard for me to justify, so stay tuned and watch me try and squirm out of that one. Let's unbox the iPhone 11 Pro Max and check out what's inside the box, and I'll also do a quick rundown of what's new while we're doing that too. So let's suspend our disbelief at what the iPhone 11 Pro Max is still missing for a moment and take stock of what we do have. First of all, Apple promises 5 hours extra battery life over the XS Max thanks to the Pro Max's 4,000 mAh capacity, a welcome upgrade over previous models. However, this does come at the expense of making things slightly thicker and heavier, but that's totally fine by me. It's a trade-off I've been willing to pay for a very long time, so it's nice to see an iPhone more able to compete with Android devices in terms of battery life for once. Slim and light is great, and that's what Apple always aim for, but not when you're permanently on 10% battery by 8 PM. The overall design has been slightly tweaked for the 11 Pro Max. There's a new frosted matte finish, and it's hard not to miss that kitchen stove camera square. Otherwise, it's just a thicker XS Max with slightly dropped buttons which make it slightly easier to reach with one hand. Nothing too groundbreaking in terms of a change of design here at all. The display, dubbed by Apple as Super Retina Display XDR, or SRD XDR for short, has received a nice little upgrade too. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely a pro display, and I can't wait to edit some photos on this thing, but in my opinion, it's nothing that your average smartphone user is really even going to notice all too much at all from previous models. But another new feature that I will use is Face ID, which is now faster. It's had a little bit of an upgrade and it works from a slightly wider angle. You're still not going to be able to unlock it when it's flat on a desk, but it is going to slightly increase the chances of a successful unlock, and that's never a bad thing. Fortunately, I'm using the Anker upright wireless charging stand, so when I'm at my desk, I can easily unlock my phone with Face ID without having to do that awkward lean over my phone. More significantly, there's also been a massive overhaul of the camera system that sees Apple make more than their usual half-hearted stab at competing on image and video quality. Not surprisingly, all of these changes are very Android-like in their execution. There's the regular 26mm wide-angle lens, a 52mm telephoto lens for zooming in on your subject without sacrificing noticeable image quality, and of course the addition of the 13mm ultra-wide camera, which all Android phones have had for quite some time. The front-facing camera got a massive upgrade though too. You can now take wide-angle selfies, making it much easier to fit in a big group of people and taking full advantage of that 12 megapixel sensor. The regular front-facing camera, however, is still the old 7 megapixel sensor, unfortunately. But nevertheless, these camera updates are a massive leap for iPhones, which finally put them in somewhat of a competitive position against other Android smartphones, something that I've been waiting for a damn long time. What also helps the Android battle significantly is the inclusion of long exposure night mode, another feature that has been available on Android devices for quite some time. It automatically senses low lighting scenarios, and if you have a steady hand, you're going to get shots that you hands down would never be able to get without the night mode function. What also further reduces my shame of going back to Apple, well, slightly, is the inclusion of 4K video at 60 FPS with extended dynamic range and software stabilization on the ultra wide angle lens. The video on this phone is totally nuts, handling an extremely vast range of different lighting possibilities without losing detail in highlights and shadows. I absolutely love the new camera interface too, which lets you know what you're missing out on just outside the edge of the frame. Perhaps the most integral of all these changes lies hidden in the guts of the 11 Pro Max, the new A13 Bionic chip. It's a nice upgrade in terms of speed and efficiency, and the silent but powerful key to smooth performance of so many of the new camera features. Okay, this phone might be stretching the definition of the word Pro, so in my opinion, I'm just gonna translate what I think Apple mean when they say Pro. They basically mean we added an Android style camera system and made the battery life more on par with Android phones. It's not the most groundbreaking phone on the market by any means, but of course, it is the closest an iPhone has ever come to competing with an Android device without a doubt. And it still has a long way to go actually. But at least you now know some of the reasons why I was initially swayed into ditching that feature-rich S10 Plus and willingly admit myself back into Apple's walled garden. Okay, we're still missing the icing on the cake with no USB-C, no reverse wireless charging, no fast wireless charging 2.0, no expandable storage. I could go on, but at its core, it's now a solid smartphone that's way more up to par with your average Android device. But with all that being said, how can I still justify going back to a smartphone that was missing so much and missing so many features of a phone released 6 months ago? Well, despite Android devices generally being feature-rich as standard, I have to say, I personally haven't made good use of those aspects over the last 6 months. I've probably only used reverse wireless charging a handful of times. 12.5 watt wireless charging wasn't really that necessary because I charged my phone overnight wirelessly. I never used the headphone jack, and I never even managed to hit my storage limit to make my expandable storage necessary. So without ever getting good mileage out of those features in the first place, it is kind of hard to miss them. Of course, with USB-C being the only exception to that. So in my mind, it was something like, well, would I rather have all of these features which look great on paper, they're great when you're choosing between which phones to buy, but then I never use them? Or would I prefer all the functionality of the Apple ecosystem, which ironically, I had come to miss? And after using the iPhone 11 Pro Max for just a few minutes, I also realized how much more I prefer the smooth operation of iOS as opposed to my more snappy Android device. Plus, I haven't even mentioned how much I missed Face ID for unlocking my banking apps, entering passwords, and unlocking my phone over the in-screen fingerprint reader on my S10 Plus. Face ID is just so quick and so painless, and as long as your phone isn't flat on a desk, you don't even need to move a muscle to successfully complete a Face ID scan. The S10 Plus does have Face Unlock, but it's laughably insecure, and I've had it disabled ever since day one. So in terms of the things I missed about owning an iPhone, without the ecosystem that had once been my ball and chain, actually the reason I left Apple, I did find it pretty lonely outside the walled garden, without AirDrop especially. So even though it can make you feel limited and almost tied to a brand which is always behind and always lacks the latest features, this experience has made me realize, and it's hard to admit, but the walled garden is worth something, and it is currently worth it. I mean, it might be different for you, but I'm pretty knee-deep in the Apple ecosystem for my work. I have a MacBook, I have an Apple Watch, and the harmony between them in terms of workflow is, for me, definitely worth ditching a few frivolous features that I hardly ever used. I mean, for example, right now, I've got my phone up there next to my camera with some notes for this video, and I actually use my Apple Watch to scroll through them instead of me having to get up and walk over there and do it. And the notes on my phone over there, I actually wrote on my MacBook. And then when I come to sit here to record a video, they're just magically already on my phone in my notes as I put it over there. So yeah, the ecosystem definitely provides a lot of value to me personally, and even just beyond AirDrop, which in itself makes my life so much easier. Okay, I'll admit that maybe I would still love to own an Android phone that runs iOS just purely for a USB-C port, But until that happens, I'll happily take an iPhone 11 Pro Max, the closest thing an iPhone has ever come to matching an Android device to date, along with a ticket back into that walled garden. So congrats Apple, you got me. Again. So now that you've watched this video, you should definitely check out my 5 must-have accessories for the 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max by clicking here. Or if you're looking for cases for all iPhone 11 variations, make sure you head over here and check out my 10 best cases video. So click one of those and I will see you in the next video.